I'm very pleased to join you for this important milestone. I really can't quite believe that it's been a decade since we gathered to launch the centre, and whilst I'm very enthusiastic to look at all of the photos, I am moderately concerned, Pauline, that we're going to look back and go, whoa, I look a lot younger in those ones than I do now. But I was honoured to be part of the celebrations then, and I'm honoured to be here again today. When we came together in 2015, it did feel like an era of hope and possibility as the world came together to adopt the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 grand ambitions to create a more peaceful and equitable world. I had the amazing privilege of being in the United Nations General Assembly chamber when Malala spoke from the balcony alongside 193 youth representatives from the UN's member states, each illuminated by a solar-powered lantern that they held. Malala reiterated her famous mantra that one child, one teacher, one book and one pen can change the world. Finally, it seemed like the global community was reaching a shared understanding that education is key to unlocking a better future for all of us. At the risk of making you pine even more for the good old days, let me remind you that in 2015, none of us would have understood the word COVID had anyone uttered it. It would have seemed laughable that Donald Trump could be elected US president and the UK was still part of the European Union. The 10 years since is not the decade for which any of us would have wished. A pandemic, rising nationalism and geopolitical tensions, war, the challenges are many. And yet Malala's words still have resonance today, as does Nelson Mandela's oft-quoted sentence, "Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world." I'm confident that all of us here today have these sentiments inscribed in our hearts. Yet we are practical people who know that change comes not because you wish it, but because you work for it, guided by the best of evidence and determined to make the most impact, which is exactly the mission of the Real Centre. In 2015, I said the centre could make a difference in helping us understand what works to make education more equitable. I am very pleased, but not at all surprised, to stand here today and say the Real Centre has done exactly that. Today, I want to delve deeper into the impact the centre's projects have had and why they are so important for our future. But first, I think in marking the 10th anniversary, it's important that we do so in a clear-eyed way and that we stocktake the context we all confront today. First, we have to recognise that as the UN's 2024 report shows, only 17% of the SDGs are on track to be achieved. The report states progress on education remains of grave concern. Over the past decade, the number of children out of school around the world has decreased, but it still sits at an unacceptably high number, with more than 250 million children and youth missing out on the formal education they deserve. Of the children who are in school, only 58% are achieving minimum proficiency in reading by the end of primary school. And when you drill down into the statistics, it is always the children in the poorest places who bear the brunt. 33% of school-aged children and youth in low-income countries are out of school, compared to only 3% in high-income countries. More than half of all out-of-school children and adolescents globally are in sub-Saharan Africa. So why aren't we making more progress? Well, initially there were slow and steady gains being made, and then we all know what happened in late 2019 and early 2020. The pandemic hit and the world changed in ways that most people couldn't have even imagined outside movies they might have watched. On top of the pandemic, the world has been contending with ongoing conflicts, political tensions and worsening climate change. Recent UNICEF analysis shows that in 2024, at least 242 million students in 85 countries had their schooling disrupted by extreme climate events, including heat waves, tropical cyclones, storms, floods and droughts. Almost 3/4 of those students were in low and lower middle income countries. South Asia was the most affected region, with 128 million students impacted by climate-related disruptions. We all know that these huge barriers to providing education for all cannot be overcome unless, as a global community, we can provide the right combination of evidence, effectiveness, efficiency, partnership and resourcing. And instead of working that through, we seem increasingly stuck in a doom loop of reduced resources and global architecture smashing. The Trump administration's decimation of its overseas development assistance is truly staggering in its size, scale and speed. It has given political cover to other governments, including to the government here in the UK, to engage in cutbacks of their own. For many years, the UK was seen globally as a remarkable example of leadership in overseas aid. The then Department for International Development was lauded as a thought leader. The UK's achievement of the United Nations goal of expending 0.7% of gross national income on official development assistance was admired. In addition, the UK stood out because the commitment to aid seemed to run deep on both sides of the Parliament. Conservative Prime Ministers appeared as likely to champion development causes, including that of education and gender, as the more progressive side of politics. Now aid is set to decrease to 0.3% by 2027, and distressingly, the UK has publicly stated that education and gender are going to take the biggest hit. Understandably, as we meet here in Cambridge, our focus is on the UK, but other countries, France, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Belgium, have also reduced expenditure. The OECD has reported that international aid from official donors fell by 7.1% in real terms in 2024 compared to 2023, marking the first drop in 6 years, and those figures are before you could factor in the US aid cuts. At this moment of crisis, we need to be honest with each other and very clear-eyed about the path ahead. First, we have to acknowledge that we have not won over public opinion to the cause of overseas aid. Governments engaged in cutbacks have not paid a political price. Second, and really as an outworking of the first point, it would be fanciful to suggest that all of these cutbacks are going to be reversed anytime soon. Third, while philanthropy has a crucial role to play and is a vital source of funding and thought leadership, it is inconceivable that money from non-government sources can fill the holes created by all of these cutbacks. The scale of the loss of USAID funding alone is in the order of $40 billion annually. While commitments like that of the Gates Foundation to increase its expenditure to $9 billion in 2025 are incredibly welcome, citing this figure helps give a sense of the size and scale of the loss of government funding versus what even a mega philanthropist like Bill Gates can do. 4, while we have all known for some time that the global aid architecture needs reform, that it is too fragmented, too donor-driven, and not as impactful as it should be, the savings that can be generated by even the most ideal system are not enough to outweigh the current aid cutbacks. I want to stress this point because this is where I fear we are going to get into a doom loop, with people like those in this room being told when they protest the aid cutbacks that the real problem is the need for reform. The truth is we need reform and resources. I note the UK government has proposed a global conference in order to have what Foreign Secretary David Lammy described as a long overdue conversation about the future architecture of aid. We should welcome that as an opportunity to clearly make this point. We need reform and resources to achieve global goals like a quality education for all. And we need reform and resources to achieve a global goal like gender equality, with the World Economic Forum's 2024 report indicating that at the current rate of change, it will take 134 years, 5 generations, beyond the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal target to reach full parity. And there is a real risk that the current anti-DEI climate created by the Trump administration's policies could take us backwards. Just like we haven't won community support for overseas aid, we have to face the uncomfortable truth that we aren't winning the battle for gender equality either. This year's research from Ipsos, the global polling company, and the Global Institute for Women's Leadership at King's College London, which I chair, shows that a significant portion of the population believes the push for gender equality has gone too far. Polling 24,000 respondents across 30 countries, the research found that 46% believe men are being asked to do too much for gender equality. This sentiment is predictably higher among men, 55%, compared to 38% of women. There is also a hardening of attitudes evident among young men. 57% of Gen Z men, to use the American terminology, those aged 18 to 27, believe women's equality has gone too far, a higher percentage than older generations, with boomers showing the lowest agreement with that proposition. At the Global Institute for Women's Leadership, we have conducted this kind of polling with Ipsos for several years now, and each year we have sounded the warning bell about the hardening of attitudes amongst young men to gender equality. While we were among the first to do this and to try and generate community debate on the issue, now you find it being debated everywhere, largely because of the way the gender divide is playing out in politics. Let's take Britain as an example. In the 2024 general election, men under 25 were more than twice as likely to vote for reform as young women. Young women, in turn, were almost twice as likely to vote Green as young men. My wise colleague at the King's College London Policy Institute, Professor Bobby Duffy, has summarised how unusual this is, saying, generations tend to move together, not go in different directions across gender lines. We don't have quality evidence about the reasons for this gendered attitude formation, but it seems likely that gender divides in media consumption is a part of the explanation. Take the much talked about podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, a podcast by an American comedian. He's also a mixed martial arts commentator. Famously, he interviewed Donald Trump for hours during the election campaign. It worked, and his listeners supported Trump over Harris by a margin of 2-1, and his listeners are 80% men, and mostly men under 35. More generally, in the US election, the gender voting figures show Donald Trump's 14% lead amongst male voters significantly offset Kamala Harris's 8% advantage among women. Similar trends have been seen in Germany, where the right-wing AfD garnered 27% of men under 25, but only 15% of women. Canada also saw a notable gender gap, with polls showing the Conservatives leading among men, while the Liberals had a 25% lead among women. South Korea presents a stark warning of the consequences of such polarisation. In the 2022 presidential election, right-wing candidate Yoon Suk-yeol specifically courted young men by denying systematic discrimination against women, winning 59% of men under 30 while only securing 34% of young women. As President Yoon subsequently cut funding for anti-sexism programs and removed gender equality from the school curriculum, understandably, women were in the forefront of the protests. The gender divide is showing in South Korea in life beyond politics. South Korea has the lowest birth rate, just 0.72 births per woman. 1/3 of women say that they do not want to get married, compared with only 13% of men. Remarkably, only 34% of women aged 25 to 29 say that they want to have children. I am conscious I've bombarded you with a lot of facts and figures, but data is crucial in ensuring policymakers, organisations, not-for-profits, everyone can make informed decisions and we can win community campaigns and generate supportive attitudes. Which brings me back to the vital work of the Real Centre. I congratulate the Real Centre for consistently being at the forefront of ensuring data is available, accessible and used. An excellent example of this is the Centre's partnership with the People's Action for Learning, or PAL network. Using their citizen-led assessment data, the Real Centre and the PAL network have highlighted the importance of tracking progress from early grades of primary school, as this is when gaps already become apparent. This work has directly informed measurement on early years learning for the Education SDG. As I said at a conference here in 2021, transparent data makes people accountable, and in these times more than ever, we need to know that the money that remains available is being spent in the most effective ways possible. We also need to inform reform conversations with real evidence, so any change is not based on guesswork. The research of the Real Centre also demonstrates the benefits of placing equity at the heart of our efforts, and that by starting with the most marginalised, all children will benefit. For anyone looking for an example of cost-effective programming delivering genuinely transformative change, they needn't look any further than CamFed. The collaboration between CamFed and the Real Centre is worthy of great celebration and is emblematic of CamFed's entire ethos of working in partnerships that are based on trust and respect. Real Centre evidence shows that for every $100 spent per girl per year, CamFed's program results show learning gains equivalent to an additional 2 years of education for all girls. And it isn't just girls who benefit. By focusing on the most marginalised girls, the evidence show that boys' learning also improves. And we know that these benefits go beyond school walls. These girls lift their families, their communities, and the hundreds of thousands of women alumni in the CamFed network are quite literally changing their nations. The evidence generated here at the Centre has been instrumental in enabling CamFed to raise new funding, and it's been influential in global debates. Together with other partners, including the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, the Centre has provided robust evidence on the impact of projects such as CamFed's flagship Learner Guide program. In 2024, more than 21,000 learner guides were active in Ghana, Malawi, Tanzania, Zambia and Zimbabwe. They reached almost 2 million students in 7,500 schools, a truly incredible result. And the program is being scaled up in these nations in partnership with government ministries. I continue to marvel at CamFed's reach. As of the end of last year, CamFed had supported 2.4 million girls at secondary school, and 7.8 million children had received school-going support at both primary and secondary level. And by all accounts, no one is letting up. This year represented the first of CamFed's Vision to 2030, a bold strategy that operates at 3 levels: Firstly, supporting individual girls to go to school. Secondly, supporting young women to transition to secure livelihoods and join a powerful peer network of leaders. And thirdly, partnering with governments to achieve adoption of best practices in national education systems at scale. These are some of the ambitious targets laid out. It's bold, but I love it, and I'm confident that we're going to get there, especially with the incredible team that works towards these goals. I pay tribute to Lucy, who's in the room, and to Angie, the CEO. The leadership you have both displayed and the way in which the transition was handled in 2023 was exemplary. Having the leadership of this movement centred in Africa, driving CAMFED forward for its next generation and beyond, is a shining example of the empowerment CAMFED looks to bestow on all its participants. And congratulations to Angie for being named one of Time's 100 most influential people of 2025. It's a testament to the reputation she rightly holds and that CAMFED holds around the world. As I've canvassed, it's been a truly monumental 10 years of change since the Real Centre launched. Looking ahead to the next decade, we face multiple challenges that will test our resolve and our ingenuity. Indeed, for education, for global aid and development overall, it's no exaggeration to say we are moving from one era into another. Yet, with this transition, there is opportunity as we work tirelessly to build the best possible version of the era to come. Organisations like the Real Centre and CAMFED are going to be more vital than ever. Their unwavering dedication, their pursuit of knowledge and their commitment to equity are the very tools that will light our path forward. So I implore you, everyone in the room, please keep up the fight over the next decade and beyond, united in our purpose. And I thank you very much for having me at today's celebration. Thank you.